since. Because most of you fish tournaments and you fish waters where Asian carp inhabit, I probably don't have to tell you what they do to a fishery. I've talked to a few of you already who have fished Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley, and you've seen what it's done to the fishery over a few years. If you fish waters where they already are, you know what they do when they jump up from boat motors. So what I'm going to focus on is what we're doing to stop them from the policy level. So a little bit of the science behind what they do. A recent 2019 University of Illinois study showed 20 years of decreased native sport fish populations in the Mississippi River. That's been anecdotal, but this new study that just came out provides the empirical scientific evidence for that. 2019 U of M study said that they'll be able to spread throughout Lake Michigan on a quagga mussel detritus. That's basically the emissions from the quagga mussels that are already eating up all the nutrients. They determined that Asian carp would be able to survive on that as a food source. And a 2017 U.S. Geological Survey study showed that they would have sufficient food availability, certainly within at least a mile of shoreline throughout the Great Lakes. And so where they saw that the impact would be felt most damagingly, I would say, is in the bays, in the impoundments, in the drowned river mouths, and all the connected freshwaters that connect to the Great Lakes. So they'll have enough to move up the coast of the Great Lakes if they get into Michigan, around, down into Saginaw Bay, where I know the Walleye Tour had a tournament just a couple years ago, because I went out on Saginaw Bay the day before and saw everybody there. Those are the types of waters that Asian carp are going to be drawn to if they get in. And so it's not just the big lakes that we have to worry about, it's the freshwater lakes, it's the rivers. So how do we stop them? The Great Lakes and Mississippi River Interbasin Study was a joint task force that was conducted by the Army Corps of Engineers, which you just heard about. They identified several critical pathways for blocking Asian carp from getting into the Great Lakes. So it's blocking those pathways, and it's implementing new technologies. Within the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, about $30 million of that every year goes to Asian carp research. And that's finding new technologies to stop them. It's management and monitoring from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's the USGS trying to find pesticides and possibly CO2 chambers that they can kill them in. And if you talk to the USGS folks, they say their goal is not to control them, it's to eradicate them. But that costs money, and that's what that funding goes to. The Brandon Road Lock and Dam is the biggest thing going right now with stopping Asian carp. Asian carp, their front line is about 50 miles south of Lake Michigan, within the Illinois Des Plaines River. There's a series of locks and dams in between. For a long time, the push was trying to get these locks shut down. That's simply not going to happen. You have to get Illinois on board with that, and the federal government, and they're simply not going to shut down shipping between the Mississippi and the Great Lakes. But one of the solutions that came forward from the Army Corps of Engineers was to rebuild this Brandon Road Lock and Dam, to make it an engineered channel that they'll include what we call a gauntlet of fish deterrent technologies, which includes additional electric barriers, a bubble curtain, acoustic deterrents, and a flushing lock. It'll also be constructed in such a way that as they add new technologies, some of those ones that the USGS is researching, they will be in the future be able to add those in there as well. This is really the only one shot that we have to get additional structural deterrents to keep Asian carp from getting from the Mississippi River system to the Great Lakes system. So in May of 2019, this has really been a decade-long process to get to this point. The Chiefs report was finally submitted to Congress. The estimate is close to $800 million. However, a lot of that, about 30%, is an unknown contingency cost. The Army Corps of Engineers is going to start doing pre-construction engineering and design. That's going to help determine what that real cost is. It will likely be a little bit less. The most likely vehicle for this to get done, it has to get approved by Congress. They have to appropriate the money, they have to approve the project, and that would be a Water Resources and Development Act called WRDA. And the Senate and the House are both fielding their proposals right now for what's going to be in that WRDA project in 2020. Now, the Water Resources and Development Act does not get passed every year. It's only every few years that they pass one of these, so if we miss this opportunity, we may not get another one. The most immediate need right now is for approval and funding for pre-construction engineering and design. This is for the Army Corps of Engineers to get started on mapping out the project in a little more detail. And to do that, they have to get a non-federal local sponsor, which has to be the state of Illinois. They have to sign an agreement. We've been waiting, and we keep hearing that it's imminent that the Illinois governor is going to sign that agreement. The Illinois portion of that is about $10 million, and actually the state of Michigan has agreed to pay 8 of that $10 million. I live in Michigan, and that's how much we want to keep it out. We will pay Illinois' tab on this, or at least 80% of it on this, from our tax dollars to try to keep them out of the Great Lakes. And why do we do that? Well, we heard about the economy that fishing provides. In the Great Lakes, fishing provides an estimate of $7 billion every year in annual economic impact. So when you look at even something that's $800 million one time, that pales in comparison to a $7 billion annual fishery. Negotiations are ongoing with the state. We hear that's going to be soon. But the big thing that we're going to need congressional approval on is the Water Resources and Development Act. We also need monitoring, reduction, and eradication. And there's some big developments in this. As I mentioned, there's about $30 million every year from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative that goes toward this. But there's a new $25 million appropriation in the most recent budget deal that goes to monitoring and eradicating Asian carp in waters they already inhabit. So think about Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley. Our Tennessee affiliate, the Tennessee Wildlife Federation, led a massive coalition that included industry, it included BASS, it included Bill Dance was on this, it included the congressional staffers for that area, Kentucky and Tennessee, as well as the staffers for Senator Mitch McConnell, who kind of ushered this through. So with that leadership, that working together, that collaboration, everybody working together, we were able to get that $25 million through the budget deal. That's going to go to things like they put in an acoustic barrier at the Barkley Lock and Dam. It's monitoring. It's also incentivizing commercial anglers to harvest more of them. They're trying to develop a market for Asian carp. They are edible. I've had them on a pate at the NWF annual meeting. They were pretty good. But they need a bigger market. And right now there isn't the incentive there for commercial anglers to fish them down in the numbers they need to be. So some of this goes to state wildlife agencies being able to supplement what commercial anglers get per pound. And that's what some of that will go to as well. So as I mentioned, what's at stake? A $7 billion sport fishery, and I was contractually obligated to include this picture because that's my boss, Mark Smith. He's actually our policy expert on Asian carp. And what we've done is we've collaborated with some of the other conservation organizations working in the Great Lakes to provide a website with information as well as an action alert that you can share and use to very quickly contact your member of Congress to support the Brandon Road project. We call it the Great Lakes Conservation Coalition. It's pretty informal. It includes Ducks Unlimited, the Isaac Walton League, us, Trout Unlimited, and then our state affiliates in Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. We have press releases, blogs, information. If you ever want to know more about what's going on with Asian carp, that's a primary source that you can go to find out the basics about their biology. A lot of you probably already have a little bit of understanding of that, but especially for that action alert, as soon as you go to the homepage that says contact your member of Congress. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to get the word out about this. That's why I'm here. And we're sponsoring a writing contest through the Association of Great Lakes Outdoors Writers. We awarded this year. It's $1,000 total that gets divided up amongst 3 places. So if any of you produce outdoor media, whether it's a video, podcast, if you write articles, if it's about Asian carp, it's eligible for this. We give it out at the Association of Great Lakes Outdoors Writers Conference in September. This year it will be in Michigan, but it's open to anybody to apply to. Some of you have seen some of the hats, the one I'm wearing, some of the ones that are out here as part of spreading awareness. Rep Your Water stocks in a lot of fly shops. We've collaborated on the Stop Asian Carp hat. They give us some of the money to do things like this. With the sales of those hats, but the big thing is we want them on people's heads, holding pictures of fish, and getting out on social media. And this is my contact information. I have a shortage of cards here, and some of you that have asked me for that, if you take a picture of this, you can get a hold of me here. Also, if you produce outdoor media and want to apply to the Asian Carp Award Contest, you just email it to me here. So I know I've gone over a lot in a short amount of time. I'm happy to take any questions that I've kind of brushed over, skipped over, gone fast over about Asian carp, about the policy process, about how we stop them and what's going on now.
Yeah, Drew, I wanted to just touch more on, I know you and I had a pretty good conversation about, the Asian carp. Our team has traveled all over the U.S. and done a lot of tournaments on Kentucky Lake. I know a lot of you guys here are walleye fishermen and northern fishermen in Wisconsin, but seeing it firsthand, I've been fishing Kentucky Lake for about 7 or 8 years now. From where the lake, where its ecosystem was about 7 to 8 years ago to where it is now, it's absolutely unbelievable. It's the destruction of these fish it's crazy. It really is. You would go down a ledge looking for bass. You'd see it, 8 years ago, you'd go down, you'd find a good school, it'd be 100 fish. 2 years later, found a good school, it was 50 fish. A couple years later, you're looking for 20 fish. And then all of a sudden, it's like you can't even find them because it's just carp everywhere. So for those of you that haven't been to a lake and seen the actual, firsthand what these fish can do, I'm telling you, I'm scared out of my mind for them to get into our ecosystem. I make part of my living guiding in Michigan, and I can't imagine the destruction that they can do on some of these smaller bodies of water, let alone the Great Lakes. So I think this is something that all of you should be really passionate about and definitely keep at the forethought of your head, knowing this is a big deal. So I commend you on what you guys are doing, and I'll be following along. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir. I don't have that. Actually, I imagine Ali, wherever he is, could probably tell you right off the bat. He's done the scientific research on this. But I can tell you that they're originally from a latitude north of where we are here, and where they're from in Asia. So I've heard some people say, okay, well, they might not like the northern temperatures of the northern Great Lakes. In that USGS 2017 study, one of the things they noted in there is that they're from a more northern, colder latitude than we are here, so that shouldn't be a deterrent for them.
Some of